Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everybody. I appreciate you spending part of your Saturday or week with me. If you like what I have to offer, please subscribe, share with a friend, and just follow me on all social media platforms, TikTok at Solo Shot Sports and Twitter at Dominic Manna 44. We're up to 2,655 solo shots. It's been a really fun last couple days with that, tracking home runs, getting back into the swing of daily updates, and so many amazing moon shots being hit across the major leagues. But there was a bigger moon shot. In this industry, we're always trying to get ahead of the curve. We're trying to make predictions that make us look smart. And usually when you predict something correctly, it's time to celebrate. It's a big moment for you and your kind of clout in this industry. This is not one of those times. I left off last week's show talking about how Shohei Ohtani had a business decision to make, how the Angels were out of playoff contention, and how honestly they should shut him down at least as a pitcher for the rest of the season. If you wanted to push and try to get 50 home runs or beat Aaron Judge's 62, I could get it. But he has so much money on the line. He has a bright future ahead of him, and he was going to be the class of free agency as a player we've never seen do this before. The first player in Major League history with 40 home runs as a hitter and 10 wins as a pitcher in a single season. And that season has come to an end, unfortunately, with a partially torn UCL for Shohei Ohtani. Now, he is still going to hit the rest of the season, but his pitching season is over, and it's not because he did it the right way. It's because he pushed it too hard. The Angels brass said all the right things, that he can come back and that they're not leaving anything off the table. It's dumb to doubt Shohei Ohtani at this point. I think everybody who has doubted Shohei Ohtani being able to be a two-way player and being able to pitch at a high level has really seen that he is a unicorn. He is a generational talent. But regardless, Shohei Ohtani, with this partially torn UCL, if he needs to go under the knife again, his second Tommy John in just 5 years, it's going to impact being able to see this stud dominate the game of baseball, make it look like Little League, playing both sides at the highest level, a true ace and a true middle of the lineup bat. So when it comes to free agency, because that is the thing that Shohei Ohtani's eye should be on. The MVP is pretty much locked up, even with him not being able to pitch. The 10 wins, the over 40 home runs, he's likely going to have over 50 home runs. It's locked. But free agency now. I hope that this doesn't mean that Shohei Ohtani, because he's comfortable in Los Angeles, because this organization believes in him and they tried to put pieces around him and everybody got hurt, including himself, that he doesn't take a short-term deal to return to Los Angeles to heal with the people that he knows and he's comfortable with, and we just have another couple years of Shohei Ohtani's career wasted in an Angels uniform. On the other hand, I think that there are tons of possible suitors now for Shohei Ohtani. Before, it was I thought it was the Dodgers and then a few other teams. I think now with Shohei Ohtani having to likely stop pitching for a while, being paid as strictly as a hitter on a 3 to 5 year contract, a prove it deal to get right, get back, prove that he can be a two-way player again. That's where a lot of teams can kind of make that push. A lot of these teams that are in the playoff picture, that have a lot of young, controllable assets that wouldn't have been in the 10-year, $600 million range, might be in the 5-year or 3 to 4 year, $120 to $160 million deal. I think something like that could get done. I think Shohei Ohtani, instead of getting paid $50 to $60 million a year, is going to be in the 40 to 50 range. And a team will get a discount on a shorter term deal to help him get back as a pitcher while also retaining one of the most valuable bats in the game. So I think the Dodgers are still involved, but I think a lot more teams are now in the mix, especially if they can get that AAV high. Maybe a team's willing to give him 3 years, 180. You want that 60 million AAV? Fine, but we can't pay you for 10 years coming off this injury. We can pay you for 3. Maybe he signs a 5 or 6 year deal, but has an opt out after year 2. I genuinely think that there's going to be a lot of suitors for Shohei Ohtani now this winter. And you would say after an injury that maybe there's less. I think that this is one of those rare opportunities where taking away part of his game potentially, you're going to be able to get a discount. And teams that weren't really in the Shohei sweepstakes before now can put their hat in the ring. But before we leave this topic, I just want to say that the 3-year run that we have just experienced of Shohei Ohtani being relatively healthy as a two-way player, a leader of a rotation, and a middle of the lineup bat, he may never get back to that level of dominance on both sides. I think he's going to be a good hitter for a very long time. I hope that all of you appreciated it while it was there. Sometimes we don't know we're in the good times until they've passed. And a lot of people were sick of hearing about Shohei. The Angels are bad. We know he's amazing. Talk about something else. We've never seen anything like him. And if he doesn't get back to form, we're never going to see anything like that stretch again. So I tip my cap to Shohei Ohtani on giving us an amazing season. Just the pure toll that took on his body to do that for that amount of time. And I hope that he wins the MVP, gets paid on a winning team so we can see him in the postseason next year, even if it's just as a hitter. And I would love to see him get back to being the two-way monster that we've gotten to appreciate the last couple years. The AL West, though, as Shohei Ohtani and the Angels have gotten injured and fallen out of it, has become a 3-team race. I talked about it last week about the Mariners and the Cubs being in the running for America's team. And I know a lot of you guys in the chat, Scott, Hugo, etc., most people were leaning towards the Mariners side of it. And I think that was fair. They were the reigning team for America's team. But the Cubs were putting in a run. But what do the Mariners do? They do the Michael Jordan from The Last Dance and say, I took that personally. They go on an 8-game winning streak, and they have just been absolutely on fire. The Rangers have lost 8 straight games. The Astros are just starting to get healthy. Michael Brantley might play. Jose Altuve's back in swing. This is amazing to see what this Mariners team has done. I told you at the beginning of the season that I thought they were able to take this next step, to go from a team that hadn't made the playoffs in 20 years to a team that can go relatively consistently. And I think by not just doing it once and looking like a fluke, doing it 2 years in a row with this young core, with this pitching staff, you can really start to get Seattle baseball excited. And I'm just so happy for the fans. Julio Rodriguez is reminding everybody what a star he is. Great second half. And honestly, this Mariners team being right there in the running, Texas, Houston, and Seattle, all right there for the division lead. It's so exciting. And what makes it even better is the Mariners' last 3 series are Texas, Houston, Texas. That is going to be must-watch baseball, regardless if they're fighting for wild card positioning or that division crown. Truly amazing baseball. The American League West has turned into the wild, wild West. Just shootouts, offensive explosion, great pitching performances. It is must-watch baseball. Usually when we have these division races coming down to the wire, it's a division like the NL Central or the AL Central, where which team can be the least amount of bad. But seeing 3 teams that have legit World Series moxie, It is amazing. And I hope that all of you, whether you're listening on the radio, checking them out through your different TV subscriptions, try to catch these games and these teams down the stretch because they all have something to play for and they all have legit World Series rosters. Moving over to second base in the National League, we talked about at the beginning of the season. I picked Mookie Betts to win the MVP at the beginning of the season. I said that he'd be the first player since Frank Robinson to win the MVP in each league, and he'd be a forerunner of the Dodger season. The first half of the season was all Ronald Acuna Jr., and while he still is likely the favorite to win the National League MVP, if you look around the league, Ronald Acuna has been fantastic. A 334 batting average, 28 home runs, a 6.4 WAR versus Baseball Reference. He has 114 runs scored, which leads the league. He leads the league in plate appearances and stolen bases with 58. But you look at the National League, and his teammate, Matt Olson, has put himself in MVP talks because Matt Olson has 43 home runs, which leads the National League, a 4.9 WAR because he's a very good defender at first base. And you look at his season, 99 runs scored, 110 RBIs. He has been very, very good on a team that has been super dominant. The only other team that is even in question in the National League is the Dodgers, and it's because of these two guys. I talked about him being my preseason pick. Mookie Betts, 6.9 WAR from Baseball Reference. He has played a good chunk of the season stepping up and playing second base and shortstop when the Dodgers needed him to, a guy who hasn't played infield since the minor leagues. In his early 30s, he's doing whatever he can to help his team win. 34 bombs for him here on August 26th. 309 batting average, and he has scored 107 runs, only 7 less than Acuna. 89 RBIs, that's 15 more than Acuna. And he's got 10 stolen bases too for a guy that hasn't stolen 20 bags since his last MVP season. So you look at him and the guy who Matt Olson replaced, who is leading the Dodgers charge, Freddie Freeman, 5.8 WAR, 23 home runs, and he has a 341 batting average on the season. Absolutely insane. 107 runs scored for Freddie as well, and 86 RBIs. And guess what? Freddie Freeman has 17 stolen bases. Yes, if you looked at Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts and said, who has more stolen bases, even though Mookie doesn't run anymore, you would guess Mookie Betts. Freddie Freeman has 17 stolen bases. This prediction that I made of Mookie Betts, and he's in the running still, it was Ronald Acuna all the way. Now Ronald Acuna's teammate, Matt Olson, has stepped up. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts' teammate, has stepped up, and it is truly a 4-horse race. These are the class acts of the National League in Atlanta and in Los Angeles. And I am confident saying that the MVP will come from one of those two teams. The question is, how are the voters going to go? Acuna has less power than Olson and Betts, but he has the stolen base advantage by a ton, and he's batting .330. Freddie Freeman is going to win the batting title, but he doesn't quite have the power of any of the other candidates. Just steady Freddie at first base. This has been really interesting to watch unfold in the second half because I feel like Acuna was far and away the National League MVP at the All-Star break. I even said that he should be the favorite. But you look at this team in Atlanta and you look at this team in LA, I think Mookie Betts has a very compelling case, having more WAR, having more home runs and RBIs, being right there as a run scorer, and the fact that he has more WAR and played in the infield this season for a team that has had the most innings lost to the injured list this season. The Dodgers are number one. Teams that are right around them, just for reference, the Angels, the Yankees, the Colorado Rockies. None of those teams are anywhere near where the Dodgers are. I told you, they have Mookie, they have Freddie, they're getting Kershaw back. They'll figure it out. And Mookie Betts has had a phenomenal season. It's crazy that the power has gotten even better in his old age. And it's just super fun. He's back in Boston this weekend, and that's been really cool to kind of see all those graphics and just see him in front of the Fenway crowd again. Whichever one of these four horses wins the National League MVP, there will be disputes. People will argue that he stole this MVP from this person, or he stole this MVP from that person, or why didn't this person get more votes? Because one of these guys is going to get left off the finalist list, which is crazy enough. 4 guys that are having legit MVP seasons. But I think when it comes down to things at the end of the day, my preseason pick of Mookie Betts is looking pretty decent right now. Let me know in the chat, in the comments afterwards, which of those 4 horses you are putting your eggs in for this season. National League MVP, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Ronald Acuna, or Matt Olson. I think all 4 have legitimate arguments, and it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw it back down the third baseline to a time in baseball history where something significant happened that I want to educate, remind, talk to people about. And there was a lot of great moments from this day. Napoleon Lajoie played his last career game, which I would have loved to talk about Napoleon Lajoie, but unfortunately, on Lajoie's last Major League Baseball game, his Cleveland team was no hit. So I didn't want to kind of bring that up. And you look around at all the different moments. There was a lot of Christy Mathewson famous starts. Greg Maddux winning his 16th straight game on the road, a record for a pitcher. But there was something that I don't think gets talked about enough. A player that's in one of the most historic clubs. On this date, August 26, 1987, Paul Molitor failed to hit safely, ending his hit streak at 39 games, the longest American League streak since Joe DiMaggio hit 56. Paul Molitor, Hall of Famer, 3,000 hit club, and he didn't just barely get to the 3,000 hit club. He has 3,319 hits. A career WAR, if you're into that kind of thing, 75.7 career WAR. A guy who started his career at third base, turned into a designated hitter, and it wasn't because he had a ton of pop. 21 seasons, 234 career home runs. So he had some power, but he wasn't a power hitter. Career 306 hitter, 7-time All-Star, won the 1993 World Series as a veteran presence on the Toronto Blue Jays, 4 Silver Sluggers, and was even a manager of the year after his playing career was done. But if you look at Paul Molitor's career, he batted over 300 in plenty of seasons, including 353 in that 1987 season where he hit in 39 straight games. A guy who scored 1,700 runs in his career, drove in over 1,300. And if you don't remember this, Paul Molitor early in his career was a stolen base machine. He stole over 30 bases 8 times in his illustrious career for 504 in his career. Paul Molitor never gets talked about as a base stealer, as a great all-around player. And truly, it is amazing when you look at his baseball reference page, a guy who does not get talked about enough at all. And it's just an absolute shame. He's still with us, age 67, makes public appearances, signs autographs, TTM. Look up Paul Molitor's page. Go check him out. His cards are cheap. His story is super interesting. And just a guy who showed up to work every day and got results, man. It's just amazing looking at his career, over 10,000 career at bats. You can't get much better in your career than a guy like Paul Molitor. So check him out. He played from 21 years old all the way to 42. And a guy who's just a professional hitter all the way through, was such a good mentor at the end that he became a manager. Paul Molitor, on this date, didn't quite get to history. A lot of people say the 56 game hitting streak is one of baseball's most unbreakable records. And Paul Molitor, one of the American League's best when the Brewers were back in the American League, gave it his best run with 39 straight games, coming to an end on this date on August 26, 1987. Rounding out the show here, we're talking about the American League, and there's a team in the American League where their GM had a press conference and called their team a disaster. Yes, the New York Yankees, the evil empire has fallen. They are in danger of having their first losing record season in a long time. And this season truly has been a disaster for the Yankees. If you look around the American League, I picked them to make the playoffs just because of how they organize their roster, how they always end up having a winning record, even when the team is old and not exciting. And this team has just been nothing. Aaron Judge has missed games. The team has not been able to step up in Aaron Judge's absence, but it's not just the performance on the field. It's all the things that have been leaking off the field about their medical staff and about the things that they've been letting go. Domingo Germán, who threw a no-hitter in Oakland this year, did not deserve to be celebrated. He's been kept around in the Yankees organization despite some really awful things off the field. He's going into the sauna while he is drunk to get over a hangover to try to pitch. Anthony Rizzo getting put on the injured list with a concussion weeks after he supposedly had the concussion. The Yankees truly have been an unmitigated disaster this season. And I know the rest of baseball kind of loves to see them struggling, but an organization that is known for being a class act, known for getting the job done, to see them in this level of disarray, to see how one player in an Aaron Judge can change the outlook of their whole season, and the fact that now he's back and they're in such a hole, they lost 8 straight for the first time ever. Aaron Judge hits his first 3 home run game to beat the Nationals, and then what do? They lose to the Nationals the next day. This Yankees team has been just not what everyone thought they would be. But you look around at teams that are in similar situations. The Los Angeles Angels had 2 of the best players in the game in Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. They had a contract of a veteran who looked to be overpaid, someone that couldn't really move around well, Anthony Rendon, Giancarlo Stanton. They have all these young players that aren't top 100 prospects, but rank highly in your organization that you're calling up to try to help. The Yankees have had Volpe up all year. They've called up a lot of their young prospects now, and they're just not getting it done. Is the Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge era of the Yankees going to be looked back at similarly to the Angels? I don't think that they're going to have as much of a playoff drought, but the way that this Yankee team is built, it's going to be hard to get out of some of these contracts. You don't have the farm depth to really bring in impact bats and pitchers. And you have Carlos Rondon's deal. You overpaid a pitcher who hasn't been able to get on the field. This is something where I think it's going to be an interesting case study looking back at this Yankees team construction, whether they get rid of Cashman, whether they get rid of Boone. The way they constructed this team, bringing in Giancarlo Stanton's contract from the Marlins, paying Judge and Cole, and kind of putting together a pish posh of everybody else, veterans galore, guys that seem to be over the hill, DJ LeMahieu, Josh Donaldson, Corey Klubers of the world over the last couple years. The Yankees have been a disaster. I know that us Red Sox fans and the rest of the baseball world kind of likes to see it, but for a team that means so much to baseball, I hope that they're able to figure it out at some point in the near future and don't go on one of these half rebuild situations that we've seen in Anaheim and we've seen some of these other teams do before. I appreciate each and every one of you for spending part of your Saturday with me. Jim, Hugo, Scott, everybody in the chat, thank you. Everybody else who listens to this throughout the week, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, helping me chase my dreams in this kind of space. And sharing this love of baseball, sharing these stories, keeping the history alive, and talking about the points that I think are valuable. You can follow me on TikTok at Solo Shot Sports or the app formerly known as Twitter at Dominic Mana 44. Check out the daily updates for the Solo Shot Swag Tracker over on TikTok, and I'll be trying to update you as the playoff stretch happens and as these highlights and things go on with my takes over on X. Appreciate you as always. I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and I will catch you guys next Solo Shot Saturday. Have a good one, everybody.